Ever notice how even when splitting the bill after a big group dinner gets complicated, some folks had appetizers, some went all out. There's still this like pull towards what feels like the fair way to do it.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It's like this invisible force field of fairness descends upon the table.
That almost instinctive sense of what's right in those situations. This might be hinting at something deeply rooted in our evolution, not just social pressure.
Okay, now we're getting into the deep dive. Are you saying our ancient ancestors battling for survival somehow shaped how we split the tab today?
It might sound strange, but yes. You provided us with research on mutualism, not the ant and aphid kind, haha, but the idea that actions benefiting you long-term because they make you a desirable partner are like baked into our very being.
So like being known as someone who's fair is good for your reputation, makes others want to team up with you, which helped our ancestors survive and thrive.
Precisely. Think of it like those early mutual insurance companies. Everyone pays in, even if only a few people need to make a claim. It works because it's about the long game, about shared risk. And the research suggests this fairness instinct might work the same way a kind of evolutionary contract.
That makes sense. But then why do we help strangers, people we might never see again? There's no long game there, no guarantee of them returning the favor.
That's the question that puzzled researchers for a long time, and this research suggests that it's not just about immediate tit-for-tat exchanges. It's about building a reputation as a reliable collaborator, someone who can be trusted to play fair even when the stakes are low. It's like advertising your trustworthiness, even to strangers, because you never know who might be watching and remembering your actions.
So it's like our ancestors were unknowingly building their LinkedIn profiles for cooperation, even back then.
Exactly. And those who had a reputation for fairness were more likely to be chosen for collaborations, increasing their access to resources, mates, and ultimately their chances of survival. So fairness, even towards strangers, becomes this winning strategy passed down through generations.
That's a fascinating way to look at it. It's not just about being nice. It's about this deep-seated drive to be seen as a good partner. But here's the thing. Doesn't fair mean different things to different people? Like in that dinner scenario, what if someone had a salad while their friend ordered the lobster? Is splitting the bill evenly still fair then?
You've hit on a crucial point. What's so interesting about this research is it doesn't argue for fairness as just this simplistic, everyone gets the same idea. It acknowledges that effort and contribution play a key role in how we perceive fairness.
So it's not about everyone getting the same outcome, but about everyone getting what they deserve based on their contribution.
Exactly. The research emphasizes that we have this intuitive understanding that those who contribute more, whether it's effort, resources, or even talent, deserve a larger portion of the benefits. They even compare it to the business world, where investments aren't just about the money you put in, but also the work you do, the risks you take.
So it's not about punishing those who contribute less,
Right.
but recognizing that effort and investment deserve to be factored into the equation of fairness.
Exactly. The research suggests this isn't just some arbitrary social norm either. It might be hardwired into our biology, like an ancient cost-benefit analysis running in the background of our brains.
So like we're naturally inclined to reward those who bring something to the table, even if it's just a really good attitude about splitting the dessert menu fairly.
Precisely. And on the flip side, we're naturally wary of those who seem to take more than they give. Those who develop a reputation for being unfair or exploitative might find themselves excluded from future collaborations, losing out on opportunities for mutual benefit.
It's like our ancestors were playing a high-stakes game of reputation management,
Yeah.
except the stakes were their actual survival.
And this is where the research gets even more intriguing. It suggests that our brains might be unconsciously employing what's called the Nash bargaining solution. Imagine two people trying to divide a pie. Each wants the biggest slice, of course, but they also both want to strike a deal. The Nash bargaining solution is about finding that sweet spot where everyone gets something, even if it's not perfectly equal, and no one feels like they got completely ripped off.
So even when we're arguing over who gets the last slice of pizza, our brains are engaged in this complex mathematical dance of fairness.
Right.
I never realized game theory could be so appetizing.
It's more intuitive than it sounds.
Yeah.
Think about it. We navigate these complex social contracts every day without even realizing it. We instinctively weigh the value of our contributions, the potential benefits of cooperation, and the long-term costs of damaging our reputation. It's like our moral instincts are helping us play this intricate game of social chess.
Okay, that makes sense when it comes to splitting bills or dividing resources. But what about those big ethical dilemmas, the ones
Yes.
that don't have easy answers?
Right.
Like, what about the classic trolley problem?
Sure.
The one where you have to choose between sacrificing one life to save five others by pulling a lever that diverts a runaway trolley.
Right.
Why do those scenarios feel so impossible to resolve?
Ah, the trolley problem, a classic moral head-scratcher.
Yeah.
And you're right, it highlights a whole other dimension of fairness and moral decision-making. The research suggests that in these complex scenarios, our judgments might consider not just the immediate outcomes like the number of lives saved, but also the long-term implications of upholding certain principles.
So, like, even if pulling the lever saves more lives in that moment, it might also mean violating the principle that we shouldn't intentionally harm others, even to save more lives. That it's not okay to play God with people's lives, even with good intentions.
Exactly. And this research suggests that our brains might be factoring in those long-term consequences, weighing them against the immediate benefits. It's like we're asking ourselves, what kind of world would this be if we started sacrificing one person to save others whenever it was convenient?
Right? It would erode trust, create fear, and ultimately make us all less safe, even if it meant more lives saved in that one instance.
Right.
It's like sometimes sticking to the principle, even when it's hard, is its own form of long-term benefit.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that morality isn't just about maximizing immediate good, but about navigating the complexities of cause and effect, short-term gains versus long-term consequences, and the ripple effects of our actions on the social fabric.
This is making me rethink my entire moral compass, but it also brings up another question. If this sense of fairness is so fundamental to human cooperation, why do moral values seem to vary so much across cultures? Are some societies just wired for more fairness than others?
That's where things get even more nuanced. And it's important to remember we're working with research, not handing down moral judgments. What's fascinating here is that the research doesn't necessarily conclude some cultures are more moral. Instead, it dives into how those differences in moral expression might actually stem from varying levels of trust and the size of our moral circles.
Moral circles, what are those?
It's basically who we consider part of our in-group, the people we extend fairness and cooperation to most readily. Imagine concentric circles. Your closest family is in the center, then maybe close friends, then perhaps your community, and so on. Our moral instincts might be strongest towards those in our tightest circles and then weaken as the circle expands.
So a society with higher levels of general trust might have wider moral circles,
Right.
meaning they extend fairness and cooperation to a broader range of people.
Exactly. And societies with lower levels of trust, perhaps due to historical conflicts or instability, might have tighter moral circles, prioritizing the well-being of their immediate group above others. It's not necessarily about being more moral or less moral, but about how these circles of cooperation have adapted to different social environments.
That's such an interesting way to look at it. It's like instead of judging different moral codes as right or wrong, we can start to understand them as adaptations to specific social and historical contexts.
And this brings us to a really thought-provoking point. The research argues that morality isn't some fixed set of rules etched in stone. It's this dynamic web of social contracts constantly evolving and adapting based on our environment and experiences.
So, if our morality is rooted in evolution, can we consciously choose to evolve it further to meet the challenges of today's world? That's a pretty big question to unpack.
It is indeed. And it's one we'll delve into further as we continue this deep dive into the evolution of fairness.
So if our sense of fairness can, evolve, does that mean we can actually get better at being moral? Like, can we consciously expand those moral circles you were talking about?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the research doesn't offer easy answers, but it does provide a framework for thinking about it. Our morality is this adaptable system, shaped by our experiences and understanding of the world. Then it kind of stands to reason that we can influence its trajectory.
So it's not about finding some universal moral code, but about understanding the principles that underlie our moral instincts, and then using that knowledge to create a more just and cooperative world.
Precisely. And one of the most intriguing aspects of this research is how it applies this mutualistic lens to other moral domains beyond just fairness. For instance, they argue that even something like the prohibition against violence can be understood through this framework.
Okay, maybe a little help with that one. How does violence, which seems inherently self-serving, fit into this idea of mutual benefit?
Think about the long-term consequences of a society where violence is rampant. It creates fear, instability, and undermines trust. In such an environment, cooperation becomes difficult, if not impossible. People are less likely to invest in the future, to build relationships, or to work together for shared goals.
So even though an individual might gain a short-term advantage through violence, in the long run, everyone, including the aggressor, ends up paying a price. It's like that old saying, violence begets violence.
Exactly. And the research suggests that our aversion to violence might be rooted in this deep-seated understanding that we all benefit from a peaceful and predictable society. It's like an unspoken agreement. I won't resort to violence against you and you won't against me because we both benefit from a world where we don't have to live in fear.
That makes me think about things like property rights, too. How does that fit into this mutualistic framework?
The research argues that respecting ownership, even if it means we can't just take what we want, ultimately benefits everyone by incentivizing productivity and innovation. Think about it. If you knew your neighbor could just walk in and take whatever they wanted, why bother planting a garden, building a house, or creating anything of value?
Right. There'd be no incentive to invest time, effort, or creativity if there was no guarantee of reaping the rewards.
Exactly. The concept of ownership encourages people to invest in themselves, their communities, and the future, knowing that their efforts will be protected. And that leads to a more prosperous and fulfilling society for everyone. It's another example of how our moral instincts, even those that seem to limit our freedom in the short term, might actually be serving a deeper evolutionary purpose.
This whole deep dive has been amazing. It's like you've given me a new lens through which to view morality, not just as a set of rules to follow, but as this dynamic system that's constantly evolving and adapting to the challenges we face.
And that's the beauty of it. By understanding the evolutionary roots of our moral instincts, we can start to see beyond the rigid pronouncements of right and wrong and appreciate the nuanced dance between self-interest, cooperation, and our innate desire to create a world where we can all thrive together.
It's both empowering and humbling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Empowering because it suggests we have the capacity to shape our own moral destiny, but also humbling because it reminds us that we're part of this much larger story, this grand experiment in cooperation that's been unfolding for millennia.
It really is. And as you navigate your own social interactions, whether it's splitting a bill with friends or grappling with complex ethical dilemmas, remember this. Your moral instincts aren't arbitrary. They're echoes of this ancient wisdom honed by generations of experience, guiding us towards a more cooperative and fulfilling future.
What an incredible journey this has been. A huge thank you to our expert for guiding us through this fascinating exploration of mutualism and the evolution of fairness. And to you, our listeners, thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into a topic that's sure to make you think, question, and see the world in a whole new light.